the egg was fire, and so I'll take that. I'll take that as a win. It was a
So are you
okay? I'm learning how to be a cook.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Midwest Chicana episodes. I'm so excited for you to be back with us on a Friday evening, and we have me and Diosselyn. Diosselyn, hello, how are you?
Good. Excited to be back and for this topic today.
Me too. Diosselyn did heavy work on trying to get these amazing people on this platform, and we're about to introduce you to them. And I just want to thank Diosselyn again for doing all the hard work that she's doing here, along with Latino Arts Foundation and working with our intern as well. So Diosselyn, thank you for being here on another night of Midwest Chicana, and we have a lot more stuff coming up in the future, so continue to watch us. So I'm Deanna Munoz. I'm the CEO, founder of Latino Arts Foundation. And like I said, we have a phenomenal group of people with us for an important topic that we want to talk about. Mental health in regards to our Latino community here in Kansas City. And I want to just start out with introducing the amazing panel. So Melanie, you're next to me. So I'm going to start with you, Melanie Arroyo MS.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Melanie Arroyo and Perez, and I am a bilingual and bicultural art therapist and licensed professional counselor. I currently have my private practice in Olathe, Kansas, where I am able to provide low-fee services to the Latinx community out there. And then but that's kind of like my side hustle. I work there on the weekends. And then but full-time, I work at UMKC, providing therapy services to the students out there. So yeah, that's kind of like what I do.
And Melanie, you're also going to be starting with Latino Arts Foundation with the art therapy classes starting next Saturday. So we do have a promo and marketing out there. And so if you are interested in having your children be a part of the art therapy, please sign up via our website. So great to have you, Melanie. Thank you for being here.
Uh-huh.
Meagan, you are up next. So nice to meet you. This is our first time meeting, and I'm so excited that Diosselyn brought you on board to be a part of this panel. So we'd love to hear more about you.
Oh, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. So yes, my name is Meagan Howard. I'm a licensed master of social work. I'm currently working as an outpatient therapist in a psychiatric hospital located in Missouri. And I also do work inpatient in a psychiatric hospital located in Kansas City, Kansas. I really have a specific interest on working with people of color, especially in regards to their background, if they've experienced trauma, and how trauma is generational and also influences the community as a whole. I have also done some work with Miss Diosselyn, when it comes to voter engagement in the community as a health scholar through KU, really focusing on how our vote really influences our policies as people of color. And so my end goal is to eventually be able to work within our prison systems and helping to create mental health programs that help integrate the family back into being able to work and talk with their family members that are in prison. And so just kind of to help disrupt that cycle of trauma. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Your voice is so important here. So we're so excited to learn more about you and everything that you're doing in the community, and how you can bring your voice here to this panel as well. Thank you so much for being here, Meagan.
Thank you.
Oscar, hello again. So excited to have you back. I'm so glad that Diosselyn got you to come back and talk to us more about mental health. I know we asked you on our last podcast to please, and you did. So we're so excited to be here. And if you can remind everybody who you are and what you do, that would be amazing.
Sure. Thank you, Deanna, again for inviting me back. So my name is Oscar Orozco, and I am, like Meagan, am a licensed master social worker. And I currently work at Children's Mercy as a hospital social worker. And my area of expertise and interest really is dealing with loss and grief and the different components that tie with that, not just the death of a loved one or a family member, but different components of grief. And also apart from Children's Mercy, I do a lot of advocacy work, also partnering with Diosselyn, and just working on different projects in the community, empowering voices of people of color, and anything I can do to help. So thank you again for having me back to discuss this very important topic.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And Diosselyn, you're up next. So if you can tell us who you are and what you do and how you're connected to all these amazing people, which they kind of told us a little bit about.
Yes. Oh my God. I I honestly never do justice to what all they do. They're all amazing people, and they all have taught me so many things. Honestly, they've helped me in tough times. But real quick, my name is Diosselyn. I'm an organizer in the community, leader in the community. Also a board in Latino arts, and doing different work with them, as you guys can see with the podcast, mentorship. Honestly, I really try to get involved as much as I can do. I don't want to take that much time because I know that they have a lot to say, but there's so many things that I'm involved with and connected with. And the way that I connected with them is I got to meet them one by one, built really great friendships. And honestly, they have been amazing. They also started talking to me about mental health. And that was one of the main reasons why I started integrating mental health into different projects and try to make sure that things are happening, because without their voices, I wouldn't have known as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you again, everybody. We appreciate this. Let's go ahead and get started. Like Diosselyn said, we have a lot to talk about. And Diosselyn, I'm going to let you take this away. And I will put the question up here for everyone to see.
Yeah, so I'm going to pair these two up because I think it may go hand in hand. So I wanted to ask you guys, what trends have you seen during the pandemic, during COVID? And what are some tips that you would recommend to all of us?
That's very broad questions because there's a lot to cover in that. I don't know. Do you guys want me? I guess I can start just by saying one trend, because I know me, Melanie, and Meagan had spoken, privately as well before this, just to talk about some things that we have noticed. And one thing was that trend of loss, as I mentioned before, that loss and grief. So as I mentioned earlier, it's not the loss in terms of death, but we're seeing a lot of that, right? We are seeing a lot of death, whether it's our family, our friends, people we work with, their relatives, it's can touch us in different ways. But we think of loss of lifestyle, loss of routine, loss of being able to have that communication with each other we know is so important as humans, to have that connection and communication with each other. And just a lot of loss of jobs, loss of income, just, what that causes. So a lot of increase in stress and anxiety. But that component of loss and grief specifically, I know we wanted to talk about. So that's one trend that I see. And I won't go too far in yet because I want to let Melanie and Meagan kind of share any other trends that they've noticed.
Yeah, so one trend that I've noticed, it kind of goes along the same lines of grief, but more like towards the perspective of anxiety. I've seen people who are taking this very well, and they're blessed to not have been very much affected by the pandemic, or like their lives haven't changed very much. But then I've had people who their lives have drastically changed because of this. And this has like exacerbated symptoms of anxiety to the point where they're starting to get panic attacks, and maybe they never experienced something like that. The constant worrying and rumination and what is the future going to hold. And when you talk about grief, Oscar, there's something to be said about anticipatory grief, or like the anticipation that there is more loss to come, and that can add to anxiety.
No, I definitely agree with Melanie and Oscar as well on that. What I've noticed is a lot of people who have come in because of a loss of support, just because you're not able to see the people that you spend time with as often, and we've had to limit our interactions with one another for safety purposes. And so the ways that people have had to communicate and connect has definitely changed. And I think that that's really had a serious impact on that experience we get when we're face to face with another person, and being able to exchange that energy in a sense, versus maybe doing it through text message, through phone, but then it's also on the other side, it's also encouraged people to reach out more because they haven't been able to oh, wait, what is that person doing? How are they handling these things during this time? And so that's been interesting to just kind of see what the clients I've been working with. Also, a lot of that up and down. Am I okay? Am I not okay? Is this all right? I don't know, and you feel like you're on that emotional roller coaster very often, especially when you're in an organization that policies are constantly changing, and really trying to adjust to that. And, it's new for everybody. And kind of going back to the stages of grief within that, you think about how anger comes up for some people, and then also that sense of depression of what is to come, but like Oscar said, we would probably dive a little bit deeper into that, because I know that was one of our guiding points, is just really the loss that we're all experiencing on different levels.
I have a quick question just to kind of go along that line a little bit. As a parent, and you're probably going to know what I'm talking about here, for students that are in this realm right now, with just even their parents trying to figure out, do I do online? Do I go in person? And just even my own kids having been inside since March, literally pretty much, and wanting my kids to interact, even exercise, right? Exercise is even an important thing as well. So that's even another topic. What advice do you give parents and students right now? I know that's two very big and maybe different things, maybe alike, but during this time, because I myself, I think I'm not even sleeping well. You think that you're doing a good job, but you also feel like, I'm not doing a good job. And then Facebook and social media, everybody's telling you what to think and what not to think. And it's just been, with all things, it's been that way. So what is your guidance on that piece?
I would say just like dropping the narrative of expectations and what this time should be about. I see a lot of messages on social media that, like, especially in the beginning, right? Like, oh, this is a perfect opportunity for self-improvement. I'm gonna lose all the weight. I'm gonna fix up my house and do all this cleaning and get super productive. And people are hitting a wall. They're realizing that they're not productive at all. They don't feel like working out. They don't feel like following the structure that they used to. And so I think we just need to have a little bit more compassion with ourselves and be more realistic. And the same expectations that we had back in January or February or even last year, they're not exactly feasible right now. So because the world is not the same. So then just changing that narrative of who we should be and what we should be doing right now, and just being more flexible and saying, what can I realistically accomplish? And I told my clients, any day that you didn't catch COVID, it was a good day. Any day that you're still here with us breathing, it was a good day. So if you didn't get all those tasks done, give yourself a little grace. It's totally okay. But I understand that that's not realistic, because the world is not being that compassionate with people. They're still expecting us to do our work, to carry out business as usual. And they expect kids to return to school and do things, right? I think the best thing that has helped a lot of my clients is setting an intentional structure and routine. The discipline that comes with that is difficult, and I get it. But it's just a matter of starting that habit. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just the habit of starting is already good.
And, I agree with what Melanie has said. And to add to that, again, tying back in to remember that component of grief, of we are losing and we are grieving, and so day to day, we might not realize those emotions are taking a toll on us because we're so busy, right? Day to day, there's so many things that keep us busy. But when we are trying to go to sleep and there's nothing to keep us busy, our mind has nothing to do but worry about that anticipatory grief that Melanie has mentioned. Are my children not going to have, a good schooling opportunity? Am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? Am I being helpful? Am I being overbearing? It just, you ruminate. And one thing I always encourage with anyone, families included, is having conversations with each other, parents and children, of being, being honest with them, saying, like, how are you guys feeling during this? What are your feelings like? Saying, I'm really nervous because I don't know what to do. And that's showing, them too, that it's okay to then feel that and express that, because you don't have to pretend that, you're strong and everything's okay, because everything's not okay. And it's okay, because it's not okay, but we have each other to lean on, while trying to cope and learn to cope, because this is something new that we're all learning. None of us can say like, oh yeah, this is my second pandemic and this is what I did the first time. And, that's not happening. So we're all learning together. And so to say, I don't know what I'm really doing and I'm kind of winging it right now. And I think parents, children would be surprised, I think, at the outcome of those conversations.
Just to kind of speak on it a little bit, I also agree with what Melanie and Oscar were saying as well. I think what I heard from Melanie was just really practicing gratitude. When she had said the whole, today I didn't get sick, I didn't get somebody else sick, I did what I could, and I think when we practice gratitude, it kind of takes away the energy that we put towards maybe the rumination or those negative thoughts. A rumination is just having your thoughts like on cycle repeat, and not really feeling like you're problem solving, but just really diving deeper into that. And I think when we practice gratitude, it kind of helps to break that cycle of feeling stuck in that. One thing that I kind of tell my clients is, we talk about the hula hoop. Imagine that a hula hoop is around you, and what's inside that hula hoop is what's in your control. And so if what's in your control is what you can do, it gives you a lot more power back to what you can do in that situation. Everything outside of that hula hoop, it ain't mine. I'm not messing with it. It's not mine, because I'm already just worrying about what's going on in my own little hula hoop. So yeah, I really like what you guys said with that as well.
I loved it that you answered all of that amazingly and gave some great tips there as well. Diosselyn, I have one more question real quick before. I know I've always.
Oh yes, no, please go, because I think this is amazing. Everything that they're saying, like honestly, it's things that I think we all need to hear. And like they said, acknowledge that we're not making this up and that this is really happening. These are some things that we can definitely take control of, and these are some advice that I'm over here thinking and processing.
I know.
So go for it.
So one question I have is, so what do you say to children or even young adults, even seniors that are going to be graduating? This is their last year, and the world is going to be very different when they go into senior year. And it's not a comfortable thing to talk about mental health in your family, but as you're, within that there is something not right and you would need the help. Like what suggestions would you give to a young adult or someone to talk to their parents or talk to a counselor or even find or reach out in some way? Like how would you give advice for that? Hopefully that made sense.
I think I would start off by validating any feelings of disappointment that people may have. And this is something that I've seen a lot at UMKC with some of the students that I work with, just like, grieving, not being able to, walk on the stage to receive their diplomas, especially when they're first generation immigrant students, and like it just meant so much to them. So validating those feelings of grief, kind of like what Oscar was saying, the disappointment, validating any like anger, frustration that comes with this, and just normalizing like it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel this way. But I guess I would like orient them to look at this as like, don't look at this as a limitation, but as like, what are the possibilities here? This is unmarked territory. We've never been through here before. What are you gonna tell people, 20, 30 years from now, assuming that we're gonna be out of this by then? Like, what are you gonna tell future generations of how you may do? How do you want to inspire other people? And like, what's gonna be your personal account? Somebody shared with me a really cute email the other day about like how, how like when you give a kid a toy, but they're playing with the box instead. And it's like you had this expectation in your mind that they were going to enjoy the toy, but they were more interested in the container, right? And so kids have that ability to look at different things that we as adults weren't even considering. They can really play into their imagination, and you can turn this into like a play opportunity to allow the children to process and connect, right? Because kids don't have those words to articulate, like I'm worried, or I have questions, or what's going to happen. What you can express all of that through play. So depending on who you're talking to, there are different ways to accommodate this experience and to add to their resiliency.
And just to add on to the question I had, Marissa's kind of bringing on, I know she's got some teenage, young adults who are also in high school. So I think what the question is here is if someone's already suffering from depression and, trying to figure out their mental health state, and then possibly even having to talk to their parents or somebody about it. So yes, thank you, Marissa, for that comment there.
And I think I don't know if it was Melanie or Meagan, but someone mentioned, the added stress that this pandemic is causing on people who have already pre-existing, mental health symptoms, anxiety, depression. Those things have heightened, and it's become people who maybe never experienced depression symptoms or anxiety symptoms have now begun to experience that. And again, we attribute that to some degree, to some component, to that loss that we spoke about, to a lot of different things, the change. And so I think that's why now more than ever, it's so important to have these conversations. To those young people or young adults or seniors, adults, anyone really this applies to. If you don't feel comfortable, speaking with your parent or a family member, branch out to someone who you do feel safe with, whether it's a friend, a coworker, someone whoever you feel safe with, to express that, to talk about it. There's always, let me not say always, but sometimes what happens is when we want to seek help for ourselves, the excuses start to roll in. There's already so much going on in the world. I don't need to add to someone's plate. I don't want to be a burden. I don't, and that in itself stops so many people from seeking that help. Other things that I hear are, I don't want to show a sign of weakness, or I don't want to seem weak, or, there's a lot of, and speaking in Latino community, especially, that machismo, you talk about, and that I think also correlates to a lot of just other males in general in different communities, that sense of like, I can't speak out because it's, we're men and we're not supposed to. So it really is a lot of breaking down a lot of cultural, stereotypes and stigmas that different communities of color carry. But I think, again, as Melanie said, we're in uncharted lands. So I think now is the perfect, there's no rules, there's no things of telling us what is right and wrong right now. It's like whatever we're feeling. And so I think right now it's the great time to start talking about that with each other and normalizing, saying like, what, right now I'm feeling really, really sad. And, someone might say, what, I've been really sad the last couple of days. And then before you know it, everyone that is around you has been feeling really sad without you realizing it, without nobody speaking it, because no one talks about it. And so then when you have that sense of community again, even though you might not be together in person, still knowing that there's people who are maybe going through something similar and are there to support you, can help alleviate some of that sense of depression or sense of loneliness that you feel with depression. So that's just kind of some of the things off the top of my head that I think of.
Meagan, were you going to add something? Go ahead. Yeah.
Say I'm on board with what you guys were saying.
And I was going to say, like, maybe now I've seen a trend of this in my private practice and at UMKC, that for some people, something about the loneliness and the pandemic and just all of these things combined, racial tensions and such, have been the necessary catalyst to drive people to go to therapy for the first time. And I commend anybody that's doing that and taking this as an opportunity to finally address things that may be completely unrelated to COVID or to the times that we're in, but somehow they just surfaced. But I understand that therapy is a bit of a luxury for people, and maybe they just don't have access to it. But there are other resources available to folks. I mean, of course, there are like podcasts on mental health that are very supportive. But I would also, and I'm sorry, I'm going to reach over my table. But like, for example, I keep a lot of workbooks that I professionally use with my clients, but they're available to anybody, like on Amazon. So like, for example, this is the cognitive behavioral workbook for depression. You can just type in, workbook for depression, workbook for anxiety. It's not the best solution out there, but it is, if that's the only thing you got, then that's permissible. And as Oscar was saying, connect with your system and like open up and tell them like how you're feeling. You never know. You might make someone's day by showing your vulnerability.
I was going to say something really quick with that, just as resources. You can also do I know telehealth is not always the preferred option, but the BetterHelp is a resource that's online that you can do virtual therapy to. And I know that they're offering reduced rates as well if you've lost your job or if you're struggling with being able to pay for therapy as well. And so there's resources like that too. And if there's organizations that are still open in the community that may offer free or reduced price services at your local community centers as well. It's just a matter, calling and kind of seeing who's there. But I definitely agree with what you both were saying, just in regards to everything that's going on. So,
Meagan, can you say that again? You said telehealth?
Yeah, so telehealth is what we use a lot of times in the hospital, but then also I know Melanie probably maybe uses this as well with private practice, and Oscar is familiar probably with this too with telehealth, is that it's being able to just talk with the provider through whatever service that you have through your phone or laptop, and the resource is called BetterHelp. That's just one of the talk therapy resources that are virtually online. And I know we were probably going to talk about this later about different methods to kind of help, but I was thinking of some apps as well for meditation purposes that would be extremely beneficial. Some of those are Headspace. That's one that people use. Calm is another one that you can use. And if you are looking for more of a spiritual background with the Christian faith, you can use Abide, which is another one that you can use as well for using meditations. And sometimes that 5-minute break throughout the day, just to kind of separate and just not do anything, can really be so healing and really kind of help ground you back to things are not as chaotic as they maybe feel on the inside, even though it may be like that on the outside. Again, hula hoop, what's on the inside, what's on the outside. So
I love it. We do have a question from a commenter, which I'd love to bring on board since we are talking about therapy and different services. Because I also had the same question too. How would you handle when your child refuses therapy? They had been in therapy before and it didn't help with 4 different therapists. I am in the same situation with someone in my family because they cannot seem to find a therapist that connects with them. And they did find one therapist that did, and then they ended up moving on. So since that last therapist, there has been no one that they've been able to reach out to. Doctors have prescribed, told us, people have mentioned, but it's just, how do you find that right therapist for your child?
So, I wish there was really an easy answer for that. But unfortunately, I think, and we see this a lot, is that there is that, because again, when you're going to therapy, it's being vulnerable, right? You are discussing really private, sometimes for the very first time, topics that you haven't spoken with someone else. So to develop that bond, it is hard, and it is important and it's crucial. And I always tell people, never settle for something that you're not comfortable with or you don't feel right. And unfortunately, after some time, that can discourage people from seeking out therapy. Some things that I might recommend, and this is just me thinking off the top of my head, is maybe seeing if a different type of therapy might be beneficial. As for example, art therapy, for example, music therapy. There's a lot of dance therapy. If someone is having it and saying and sometimes it can be just as a person, I have a hard time expressing myself through words, and that is okay. That is a-okay, because not everyone is going to be good at doing that. So then in what other healthy ways can we express then these emotions? How can we let out this anger, this fear, this, whatever it is that is leading us to feel this way? How can I release that? And so maybe offering that, because when someone says therapy, talk therapy is the first thing that comes to mind, but there's other ways, other forms of therapy that could be beneficial to still help deal with those emotions, but maybe not doing it in a way that needs to involve a lot of talking. And so, I think there's a lot of different layers too. Sometimes I say people, it's not just sometimes therapy. Sometimes people need different layers to that, and again, it's hard to say because, each child, each young adult is so unique, right? Each need of a person is going to be individualized. And so do I wish there was more funding in our mental health system to be able to better provide more options? Absolutely. And unfortunately, again, we're seeing the opposite, where we're getting cuts of funding in those mental health sectors. And so, again, I wish there was an easy answer, but unfortunately, like I said, it is trial and error. And it can be, again, exhausting for the family. I mean, it's a tiring process, especially because it's mental health. And what I always tell families is that mental health is, it's not something that, you can't just take a pill and then you feel better. This is something, there's ups and downs. And, just praying and hoping that someone does be able to connect with them, maybe group therapy. Seeing if that's an option to see, it takes away from the personal of just me and it turns into an us. And that sometimes is helpful to not make people feel so like the spotlight is just on me. We're all in the spotlight, and that's maybe it could be a little bit helpful. So those are just some of the things that off the top of my head I can think of. Meagan, Melanie, I don't know if any of you guys can think of additional things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so something, sorry to cut you off, Meagan, but just something I want to add real quick. I typically work with adults. I'll do work with children occasionally, but that is a very valid question to ask. And I really appreciate people bringing this up, because it is kind of hard to get children to therapy. And the relationship is so crucial, and it's such an important element of successful therapy. And so it is discouraging when you're hopping between all these different therapists, and then you have to start your story all over, and then there is no continuity, and then you have to start all over again, and que flojera. So maybe it's okay to consider that maybe right now is just not the best time for a child to go to therapy, either developmentally or just because of their age or the situation that they're in life. Maybe right now this is not the best time, but nonetheless, I'm not saying don't support your child. We still want to support and nurture their mental health right now. And parents are a crucial element of the mental health, and particularly the attachment and the bond that you have with your child. So maybe starting there, starting in the home, starting with you. Something that I've seen with my adult clients is that, they'll come into therapy, sort of complaining about having these issues in the home, with the family, with the children. And then when we focus on themselves, on the client, and we address the depression or the anxiety or the trauma that they've been dealing with for years, and they start to heal and work through it, and they start to like go back home feeling better, all of a sudden it's like the family is doing better too. And like los agarra de sorpresa. This completely takes people by surprise because they're like, wow, ever since I managed my depression and my anxiety, my children are behaving better and they're waking up happier and they're doing better. And like I can see it in them. And sometimes we forget that our mental health, like the mental health of the parents, is the foundation of the mental health of your children. So this is not to, shame anybody or put anyone on the spot. Of course not. Therapy is a very personal decision. But as an adult, if you notice that your children are struggling, notice if there is any way that maybe they're struggling because they're picking up your depression or your anxiety. And again, they don't have the words to articulate what's going on with them, but you do. And so you can take care of that on your own and just notice how you getting better is going to support the mental health of your children.
Meagan, did you have anything to, before I, because I said like that I was wanted to touch base on that was really important.
Yes.
When it was, someone said, could you share research that reinforces the idea of how representation matters in counseling? And
Oscar, before you start, can I say something real quick? That was my next question. I was going to be like, yes, because on top of that, LGBTQ, it is so important to have LGBTQ therapists, and we cannot find LGBTQ therapists that is Latino or Latina as well. So, yes, ready.
I mean, there is research, and I can just say I know we didn't bring anything ready with us, but there is a lot of research that stands behind the idea that representation and similar representation, me being Latino, going to a Latinx therapist does can bring more sense of aiding in that vulnerability and that sense of trust, and in different communities. And unfortunately, and that is true, there is a lack of minority therapists, a lack of Spanish-speaking therapists, a lack of Black therapists. It is, and it's very much needed, especially when we're looking at our community. What are we representing our community, and we're not? The numbers don't represent that for the work. The professionals versus the community. It's not matching. We're not there, and it is a serious problem. And I think to myself of how that could be a factor that could strengthen that clinical relationship, that therapist-patient relationship, client relationship, and because again, I have run into again, just working at a hospital, I only work on the inpatient side, so typically I don't get to work with families too much, but the young adults, the children who are sometimes, I would say 15, and I get up to like 20-year-olds still there, will say the same thing, to say like, I just didn't connect. I just didn't feel comfortable. And a lot of the time I'll ask, talk to me about the therapist you've seen when I try to find new resources. And most of the time it will be, primarily white therapists who they are seeing. And a lot of, again, the kids that I'm seeing are coming from a lot of different backgrounds. And not once typically have they seen any therapist similar to them. And so there is a gap. And I think it's an important one to address, because it's definitely, I think, impacting the ability and results here in our community.
Yeah, I actually want to speak to that really quickly, just because what's been, I think, a huge challenge with working with my clients of color is that everything that's going on with the murders, including in police brutality and just the murders of so many people of color, Black people. And what's really been challenging is that racism has been happening COVID happened, but racism has still been happening. The injustices have still been happening. And so I think, and I'm just going to be very blunt here. It's been really interesting to watch white people recognize racism in real time and really kind of be a little bit insensitive in a sense to the troubles that people of color go through, especially Black people, just regards to everything that's going on right now, because they talk very freely about the traumas that people of color have had to go through when not recognizing necessarily the impact that it has when you bring up somebody's trauma and you haven't walked in their shoes. And so I agree when it comes to having therapists of color who can relate and understand. And that's where a lot of my clients of color have really been able to really feel like they can speak up and say, hey, this has been happening on top of COVID. And so as a Black woman, I resonate with that very strongly because I'm sitting there with my Black clients, my Hispanic clients, Asian, whatever it may be that is being impacted right now. And just really being able to say like, hey, as people of color, we have a whole different battle that we're fighting underneath all of this other stuff that is going on. And so just to be able to sit in a room and not have to explain yourself over and over again or explain your story is really important. So, but yeah, I was just kind of sitting here thinking, I know we're speaking just for people of color in general, just how the struggle is way different. And we need to be with people who can understand that. And as professionals, for us, we understand it, but there's just so many limited numbers on how many people can really help. So.
And another example that I just kind of to show the importance of that in just real time is me. I am one. I think of only two. I want to say 2 or 3 bilingual social workers at Children's Mercy out of like 100 and something. And so when I walk into a room with a Spanish-speaking family, you could immediately just almost sense that sign of like relief of like, oh my God, or when I just come in and I start speaking Spanish, they take a deep breath and, it's not another barrier that they have to do. They don't have to have an interpreter, which, not to say that, interpreters are, we wouldn't be the same without them. But, it takes that, it's more personal, than having to communicate with a third party. But that sense, getting to check up on them and having them be comfortable speaking in their own language and understanding when they are immigrants or when they're here with undocumented, they feel more comfortable talking to me about that. They don't talk to their nurse about it. They don't talk to their doctor about it, but somehow they're talking to me about it. It says why. So just to add to that emphasis of how that really is important and it really does make a difference.
I'm just going to add something too, if you guys don't mind hitting on this too. One of the things that we did at the center was Preparémonos clinics for Know Your Rights and all of the systems. But I think like a lot of the things that, Melanie helped, Oscar helped, Meagan helped on that. Do you guys mind touching on that and how it really that opens up to a lot of conversations that we just don't have nowadays? And thank you, by the way, for helping me out in Preparémonos clinics because you guys did so amazing.
I think something important that we learned that day is that therapists really need to be flexible. Like we need to be flexible in how we approach the community. I think something that we realized, Oscar, is that people want to talk. People want to share their stories. They want to help. They're just uncomfortable asking, and that is perfectly okay. And it's even expected, especially in our culture, being Latinos, we never want to be a burden to anybody, or we never want to take up someone else's space because we're like, oh, well, they have it worse. Mine is not that bad. So I want to leave that resource for someone else. People are very humble. And something that we learned that day when we were working with the Preparémonos clinic was that sometimes therapists need to humble down and know that people are not going to come out looking for you. we need to go to them. We need to go to the community. We need to go to people because they want to hear from us, and we want to hear from them. And so that is something that I strongly advocate for, as well as eradicating the barriers in the system that keep people from even accessing therapy in the first place. And because there are so many, not just like finances or the lack of insurance, but also like transportation. Where is your nearest therapist? And when you decide that you want to go to therapist, where do you even start? Like for people, that's very confusing. Like, do you ask around? Do you just look at, you look it up on Google and maybe you find something. But yeah, so this is why it's important that us therapists, we step it up a little bit and we do things like this, where we are the ones reaching out to the community and letting them know, hey, we're here, we're a resource, and we're here to support you.
And, adding to what Melanie said, because it's very true, is, from my experience in those preparados clinics was that, again, Melanie said, I remember she was helping with the children doing an art project in the back. And even I still remember what some of those kids' response to creating their picture was. And I was like a lot more depth than some adults can do. So I was like, okay, some 6-year-olds with wisdom. And
yes,
while I, spoke with the parents or just with adults, and again, seeing a familiar face, I think added a level of comfort. Being able to speak in your language added a level of comfort. And when, I am one to say there's things such as bad therapists, that's what it is. There are people who shouldn't be therapists, but they are. And that's the thing. And so is it going to be hard that when we're looking for help, we're going to run into these people? And the answer is yes, unfortunately. But again, this is why Melanie said so people can sense if you're genuine about wanting to help, especially when it comes to, are you wanting to help me? That people can sense really quickly and really easily, I think, from my experience. And so if you're not genuine, then people can sense the BS and they will stop. They won't open up and they'll go to therapy sessions with their hands crossed and one-word responses. And it's understandable. And so again, with that just really showed me how when I asked these people, how are you doing with this? How are you feeling? And just asking that, I had people, burst in tears, and it caught me by surprise. I was like, oof, but to really have someone sit down and genuinely ask you how you're doing and actually have care and meaning behind that question, it can be a lot.
Oscar, I'm so glad. I'm gonna say this and I'll be quiet so that way Diosselyn can get all her questions too. I'm glad you mentioned bad therapist, or I was 11. My parents were divorced, and my mom is bipolar. Went through a very bad situation with alcohol and drugs, and as an 11-year-old experienced a lot that probably I, at this point, understand now, not so much then. And the therapist actually told me while I was in parenting therapy with my mom that it was my fault that she was the way she was. And as an 11-year-old, that has stuck with me because I believed it. Like forever, because my mom believed it too. She was like, we're paying this woman to be helping us, and she's saying it's your fault, so you need to do better. And I grew up with that pretty much all my life in the back of my head, and along with many other things. But I think that's why even with my own kids, when it comes to therapy, I'm so conscious about it. And just the fact of representation, LGBTQ. And if I, as a parent, can't even find that for my own kids, I feel like I'm disappointing my children, because I don't want to have them go through what I had to go through. And I feel like I'm already doing that by not being able to provide them the care they need, by not finding the people they need, because they've been to therapists that were Caucasian and white, and it just didn't work, 2 or 3 sessions, and it's a lot of money. Insurance doesn't always pay for it. So you're spending $300 or $400. One therapist just totally dismissed her and was like, oh, sorry, we forgot your appointment, but you can come back like in an hour. Just even that, just not caring about someone is just so I think I've hit a lot of bad therapists in my life. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up, Oscar. Now I'll be quiet. But thank you for saying that.
No, yeah. And I also really appreciate Oscar saying that, because it is so true. And this is why I tell people, like, I encourage everybody to interview your therapist first. And people have never even thought about that. They're like, oh, I thought I couldn't ask my therapist questions. Please do. I mean, yeah, don't ask them inappropriate, like, are you married? Or like, are you dating? You want to go out for dinner with me? I've heard all of those. Don't ask those questions, but like, do ask them, like, what's your experience working with the Latinx community? What has been your experience working with individuals with trauma? What has been your experience working with survivors of domestic violence? What are your thoughts on the current political tensions? Did you vote for? You can ask them that, because if a therapist hesitates, I'm going to be bold. Like, you can ask them, did you vote for Trump? Because if your whole therapy experience is going to be devoted to you talking about how difficult these last 4 years have been, and the therapist across from you is hesitating to answer that question, you don't need to be there. And they're not going to impose their political values on you, or at least they shouldn't. They can, butter you up and tell you, oh yeah, like, I'm just here to listen to you and to support you. And I've never been in your shoes, but I can hear you out and validate those experiences. No, if they're not answering your question, then that's a problem, because it makes me question their cultural competence. Because anybody else who knew where you're coming from with that question would simply answer it and say, no, I didn't. That person does not align with my value system, and I'm not here for that. Because what I hear from a client when they ask me that is that they want to make sure that they're safe. And I'm here to tell them that this is a safe space.
No, I just wanted to hop in on that as well. I definitely agree with that. I think some important key things that people should take from that is, one, when you walk out from that session, ask yourself, did I feel heard? Like, did I feel like this person really heard what I was trying to say? Or did I walk out still feeling kind of like, I don't really know if they were even listening? And then I think another one would be if there was a goal, some sense of direction for where the therapy is supposed to go going forward. Because I think I've had people in other experiences when they come to me and they say, yeah, they just asked me some questions, and I say, yeah, or okay. And, and that's it. And there's no, what are we trying to work on? What are your goals? How can I support you in getting to those goals? And what are some areas that we can address with that as well? And so I think being able to ask them those questions to yourself once you're leaving is important. I also tell people to give it 2 to 3 sessions. If you're in that and you're like, this is not working for me, I don't feel a connection, I don't feel like you're hearing me, I don't feel like we're doing anything, then it's probably a wrap, and you should find someone else. And in the same way that we're not going to like every person that we meet, you're not going to like every therapist that you interact with either. But I do encourage people as well, and I'll wrap this up. I encourage people as well, kind of going back to group therapy. That is definitely an option. Do group therapy first, because it kind of takes away some of that pressure of being able to just be one-to-one, and you can kind of listen to other people and see how they interact with that therapist, how that therapist interacts with them before you fully get 100% vulnerable. I always tell my clients on their first day, you do not have to talk. You can just sit back and observe and just kind of get some feels. But if you feel inclined to want to speak up, you might be in a good place. So just like you both said, you can filter through and interview your therapist. And I'm very open to say that I've gone to therapy. I've interviewed my therapist and been like, I know what I'm looking for because I'm trained in it, honey. So you can tell me what you got, because, so it's important to be able to do that because they're here for you. So,
yeah. And let me just jump in real quick and just add that relationship is the most important healing component of the therapy. Your therapist can have a fancy degree from a top-notch university, and they can have all these years of experience. But at the end of the day, if the relationship is not there, the therapy is not going to work. So just give yourself permission to be selective.
This is so amazing. And we could go on all night. And I know that it's already been an hour, and I can't believe it's already been an hour. So me and Diosselyn are going to grab these two questions. And Lucero has a very good question because I'm about to ask the same thing. If you're taking any new clients, just raise your hand. Are you taking clients? Okay, perfect. Yeah, awesome. Okay, I think you're going to get a lot of DMs. So Diosselyn, do you want to take this next question?
Yes. Honestly, like you said, I'm gonna echo you, Diana. Thank you so much for having this conversation. It's like I am very thrilled, excited that you guys are here and saying all of this because one, I've heard them say it before, which is like it's a lot of things that they trigger in my mind. And two, these advices that they're giving are definitely true. Definitely true. Those advice I even put to practice as well, and it helped out so much. So thank you guys so much for doing this again. And hopefully you guys get to come back and talk to us more. But to grab one of those last questions, Tay had a question that we really liked. And with the current state of our country regarding mental health, race issues, and COVID, do you all feel that your approach to advocacy as professionals has changed or grown?
If I can kind of speak to that, I definitely feel like mine has it's fluctuated, it's changed where I find myself detaching a little bit, if I can be completely honest, just because I felt extremely overwhelmed and didn't feel like I could be productive or helpful because I needed to deal with my own emotions that were coming up and how I was being impacted. But once I kind of got that second kick, I've been going back out and have changed the way that I advocate. And it's funny, I don't have social media, but I make posts for one of the groups that I'm a part of for them to post because it just really helps with talking about voting right now, because that right now, real quick, I'm going to hop on my pedestal real quick with that. Voting right now is what is going to save the spirit of our country, just to be completely honest with you. And so I really have been trying to push for, August 4th, you guys, for Kansas is when you need to get out there and vote. And understanding, absentee ballots where people can do those, where people can do mail-in ballots, and really spreading that information. And then also, I know for protesting, I know for some people, they say getting out there is kind of like, I don't know if I want to be exposed. I don't know if I want to be out there. There are so many different ways that you can still advocate and get your voice out there, especially through reaching out to your local representatives, writing notes, signing petitions. Change.org is always sending out petitions for issues that are related to the things that are going on in the community. So yes, I do feel like my approach has changed, but I am happy with the way that it's changed because I'm becoming more involved in a way that feels comfortable for me, while still being out there and getting the message out there, especially for the Black community. So.
I kind of agree. I have to say quickly, I know we're running out of time, so I'll be quick. I definitely have changed in my approach, especially as a professional when it comes to advocacy, because as social work, social justice is one of our, main things that we have to stand for. And so that made me reflect. So as Meagan said, there was a lot going on, a lot of triggers. I've been to therapy before when I was younger. I said that led me into wanting to be an advocate as well. And so and not to say that I've, got under control or anything, but a good self-awareness to say, these are my triggers. This is what I can handle. This is the line that I draw and no one's going to pass it. Because that's my line. Oh, the hula hoop. Yes. Thank you. The hula hoop. Draw that hula hoop around you, draw that circle, and don't let anything come in, and it's to say the same thing. You have those boundaries. And so I've set my boundaries to know what I can handle, what I can handle, and then using my platforms, speaking out, using my voice, because for some reason people listen. I don't know why, but they do. And so, having to use my voice in a way now that is smarter to address big important issues that are happening and not being apologetic about it.
And what I would add to my experience, I think this year, if anything, it has most certainly enhanced and influenced and helped my growth as a therapist, and especially in my advocacy. But more than anything, I feel that my work is being valued even more because of all of these things. I would say that my I started to question my role as a therapist back in 2016 because I was still in grad school back then, and I approached professionals who were already in the field, and I would ask them like, I don't know, how do I support marginalized communities or individuals who come from marginalized communities? How do I support them in therapy? I just don't know what to do. And they just kind of looked at me like, well, just give them coping skills, duh. But it didn't really resonate with me. I just didn't think that was appropriate to say. You can't meditate your way out of poverty or racism. And so we need to accept that the system is such, and just, I don't know, it just felt complacent to ask my clients to just accept that this is the world that they live in and they just have to conform to it. I was not okay with that. And so, but it was kind of sitting in the background for me. And once I started working at a community mental health center in Kansas City, and I started hearing people's stories, which they didn't owe to me, and I was very much appreciative that they would share these experiences with me, I started to reevaluate what my profession was about. Like, all of a sudden, it made sense that therapy had to go beyond the office. The change and advocacy, those are important elements of therapy, and therapy is inherently political. And so I would do my best to validate the circumstances of my clients and remind them that the situation that you're in and the position that you're in is not your fault. You were simply born into conditions that were put in place before, for generations before you. And so, but I have a responsibility, because again, if I'm hearing all these stories about systemic oppression and racism, and I'm just going home every day acting like everything's okay, that's being complacent. And that's when it hit me. I'm like, I need to join the political scheme in some way. So I encourage all therapists, I mean, any therapist who's not, advocating for voter turnout, or knocking on people's doors, canvassing, doing that kind of work, running for office themselves, then how are you actually helping your clients? So that it just kind of made sense for me. So ever since, I've been involved with supporting other people's campaigns, volunteering, canvassing. I'm a committee woman in my district, things like that. But we really need to rethink how we approach therapy and start to accept that advocacy is an important element of it.
And I want to say one last thing really fast about that. And I think just kind of speaking to the collaboration, because me and Diosselyn talk a lot about this, that the Black and Brown communities joining together is just going to make us so much more powerful in advocacy as well. And so I think just being able to show just the commonalities and common ground that we all just share, and being able to come together and really build together as a force, we really could make those changes that we see on this micro level that can trickle to that meso and macro level or higher level above us. So I just wanted to say that, just because, like I said, as a Black woman being in the space as well, just kind of being able to share my perspective, I think it's been really cool just to see, just a lot of common ground that's shared there. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for talking and highlighting about advocacy, because I am a huge believer in that as well. And I'm so glad that you guys have brought it up, and how it is very influential too for us to even step into those positions and be able to change those policies that can help even enhance the work that you guys are already doing too, because there's so much work to be done. So thank you guys so much for highlighting that. And honestly, all of you guys have done amazing work in our communities. You guys have all advocated, standing up and talking, and Melanie has done she has done so much too. So thank you guys so much from the bottom of our hearts, because this is amazing that we're having this conversation.
Yes, and I just want to piggyback on what Diosselyn's saying, because that's exactly, thank you, Diosselyn, for setting this up. Thank you for introducing me to these amazing people. And I am going to be honest, this is my first time having a group of people of color therapists, and me meeting them and knowing that you're out there. And it just gives me hope that there'll be other people, young people, who also want to come into this field and help their communities and support their communities. Because as you can see, these people are therapists, but they're also here for you, and they're here for your community, and doing so much to ensure that you all are healthy and good, and just being that support system that a lot of us don't have. And I just want to thank you so much for being that, because I know I've probably, Oscar, you've seen this before, I like cry because it's a lot of pain that I've had, like I said, in the therapy world, and to be able to see people like me and to be able to see people like the people I love on this platform right here, it just means the world. So I applaud all of you for doing the amazing work you do. And I appreciate you being on this platform. This will be shared everywhere. So I hope your DMs and your messages and your clientele grows a million times more, because there are people out there to support you that look like you, that support you, that are in your communities, that have empathy for you, because that is so big. Empathy is so important. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, that's it. I'm so sorry. It was like an hour that went like in 5 minutes. So thank you to the viewers. Well, the comments are there. So if you all want to go out and answer any of the comments, please do so. Or if you want to add any of your resources there as well. I try to catch some of them, but if you want to put any of that out there so other people can see it as well, we'd appreciate it. So thank you so much, everybody. Have an amazing night.
Thank you.